20 of the world's best doctors stood helpless as a young billionaire lay dying before their eyes. Medical machines beeped frantically. Specialists argued over test results. Time was running out. Then a 7-year-old flower girl walked past the hospital room, selling roses to feed her sick mother. She glanced through the window for just 3 seconds, and in those 3 seconds she saw something that 20 brilliant doctors had completely missed. What she discovered next would leave everyone speechless and change multiple lives forever. Before we jump into this incredible story, drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. We love hearing from our viewers around the world. The rain came down hard that Tuesday evening in Chicago, turning the streets into rivers of brown water. 7-year-old Lily Chen stood under the narrow awning of Memorial Hospital, her small hand clutching a bucket filled with red roses. Her worn pink jacket, 2 sizes too big, hung off her thin shoulders. Water dripped from her dark hair onto her face, but she barely noticed anymore. She had been standing there for 4 hours. "Roses for your loved ones," Lily called out softly to people rushing past. Her voice was gentle, almost musical, but most people ignored her. They were too busy getting out of the rain, too focused on their own problems to notice a small girl trying to sell flowers. Inside Lily's pocket was $3.40. She needed at least $15 before she could go home. Her mother, Sarah, lay in their tiny apartment 3 miles away, too weak to work. The medicine her mother needed cost $20, and they were already 2 days late on rent. Every rose Lily sold brought them closer to survival. A woman in a business suit hurried past, splashing muddy water onto Lily's already wet shoes. Lily didn't complain. She simply wiped the water from her face and called out again. "Fresh roses, only $2 each." A man smoking a cigarette stopped and looked at her bucket. "How old are you, kid?" "7, sir," Lily answered politely. The man shook his head. "You should be home with your parents, not out here in the rain." "My mama is sick, sir. I need to help her." The man's expression softened. He reached into his wallet and pulled out $5. "Give me 2 roses, keep the change." Lily's face lit up like a lamp being switched on in a dark room. "Thank you so much, sir. God bless you." As the man walked away, Lily carefully placed the $5 bill in her pocket with the other money. $8.40 now. She was getting closer. The hospital entrance was the perfect spot to sell flowers, Lily had learned. People coming to visit sick relatives often wanted to bring something cheerful. Some bought roses to celebrate good news, others bought them to comfort someone in pain. Either way, flowers helped people express what words sometimes couldn't. Lily had started selling roses 3 months ago after her father disappeared. One day he had gone to work at the construction site and he simply never came home. Her mother had filed a missing person report, but the police had found nothing. Bills started piling up. Food became scarce. Sarah tried to work while sick, but eventually her body gave up. That's when Lily knew she had to do something. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had noticed Lily's tired eyes and the way she sometimes fell asleep during math lessons. When she asked Lily what was wrong, Lily had told her everything. Mrs. Patterson had given Lily $20 and an idea. "My aunt sells flowers at the market," she had said. "Maybe you could do the same after school." So Lily had started buying roses wholesale from a flower supplier who felt sorry for her and gave her good prices. Every day after school, she would walk to the hospital and sell flowers until dark. On weekends, she worked all day. The money kept her mother's medicine coming and kept the lights on in their apartment. But it was hard work for such a small girl. Her feet hurt constantly. Her arms ached from carrying the heavy bucket. Sometimes grown-ups said mean things. Last week, a security guard had tried to make her leave, saying she was bothering people. But the hospital administrator, Mr. Johnson, had overheard and told the guard to let her stay. "That child has more determination than most adults I know," he had said. Tonight, the rain made everything more difficult. Fewer people were stopping. Those who did stop were in a hurry to get inside. Lily's bucket still held 15 roses. She needed to sell at least 5 more to reach her goal. Suddenly, a black limousine pulled up to the hospital entrance. It was the kind of car Lily had only seen in movies. long and shiny with windows so dark you couldn't see inside. A driver in a black suit jumped out and opened an umbrella, then rushed to open the back door. A woman stepped out wearing an expensive coat that probably cost more than Lily's apartment rent for an entire year. Her jewelry sparkled even in the rain. She was followed by two men in suits carrying briefcases. "Mrs. Reynolds," one of the men said urgently, "we need to hurry. The board meeting starts in 10 minutes." The woman, Mrs. Reynolds, looked stressed and worried. Her eyes were red as if she had been crying. Despite her fancy clothes and jewelry, she looked sad in a way that made Lily's heart hurt. Without thinking, Lily stepped forward. "Excuse me, ma'am, would you like a rose? They're very fresh and pretty." One of the men waved his hand dismissively. "Not now, kid, move along." But Mrs. Reynolds stopped. She looked down at Lily, really looked at her. She saw the wet hair, the too big jacket, the hopeful eyes, and the bucket of roses. "How much?" Mrs. Reynolds asked. $2, ma'am, but they're worth much more. They last a long time if you take care of them." For the first time that evening, Mrs. Reynolds smiled slightly. "You're quite the saleswoman." She opened her purse and pulled out a $20 bill. "I'll take all of them." Lily's mouth fell open. "All of them? But ma'am, I only have 15 roses. That's $30 worth, but you're giving me 20. "Then it's a deal," Mrs. Reynolds said. "Keep the change, you've earned it." "Thank you. Oh, thank you so much." Lily quickly handed over all 15 roses, her hands shaking with gratitude and relief. With this money, she had made $38.40 today. Her mother would be so proud. As Mrs. Reynolds and her companions walked toward the hospital entrance, Lily called after her, "Ma'am, I hope whoever you're visiting gets better soon." Mrs. Reynolds paused, her back still turned to Lily. Her shoulders seemed to shake slightly, then she continued walking without looking back. The men in suits were having a quiet, intense conversation with Mrs. Reynolds as they entered the hospital lobby. Lily, curious and wanting to thank Mrs. Reynolds one more time properly, followed them inside, staying a respectful distance back. The hospital lobby was warm and bright compared to the cold, dark street outside. Lily's wet shoes squeaked on the polished floor. She watched as Mrs. Reynolds and her companions got into an elevator. Just before the doors closed, Lily saw Mrs. Reynolds bury her face in the roses, breathing in their scent. She was definitely crying. Lily's heart felt heavy. Whoever Mrs. Reynolds was visiting must be very sick. "Hey you!" A security guard approached Lily. It was a different guard than the one who had tried to kick her out before. "Are you selling flowers inside the hospital? You can't do that." "No, sir," Lily said quickly. "I'm done selling for today. I was just getting warm before I walk home." The guard's expression softened when he really looked at her. A small, soaking wet child standing in his lobby. "Where's your mother?" "She's at home, sir. She's not feeling well, so I sell flowers to help." The guard sighed. "You shouldn't be out alone this late. It's almost 8 o'clock. "I know, sir. I'm about to leave." Lily turned toward the exit, but something made her stop. Through the large glass windows of the lobby, she could see the rain coming down even harder now. The walk home would take at least 45 minutes in this weather. She was already soaked and shivering. "Tell you what," the guard said. "Wait here for about 15 minutes. The rain should slow down a bit, then you can go, but stay in the lobby where I can see you, okay?" "Yes, sir, thank you, sir." Lily sat down on one of the cushioned benches near the window. The warmth of the hospital slowly seeped into her cold bones. She watched people come and go, doctors in white coats walking quickly, nurses pushing carts, families holding hands, their faces showing worry or hope. About 10 minutes later, the elevator doors opened and people started pouring out. Not just a few people, but dozens. Doctors, nurses, people in expensive suits, hospital administrators. They all looked frantic and worried. "Call Dr. Morrison at Northwestern," someone shouted. Get the helicopter ready, we might need to airlift him. Someone contact Johns Hopkins, we need their toxicology team. Lily watched with wide eyes as the crowd rushed toward a hallway marked private suites. Something big was happening, something scary. A nurse hurried past Lily's bench, talking rapidly on her phone. Yes, I understand. 20 specialists are here already, but his condition keeps getting worse. They've ruled out every standard diagnosis. Nobody knows what's wrong with him. Lily's curiosity grew stronger. Who was sick, and why did it take 20 doctors to help them? Against her better judgment, Lily stood up and slowly followed the crowd. The guard was busy dealing with reporters who had somehow learned something important was happening and were trying to get inside. In the chaos, nobody noticed a small girl slipping down the hallway. The private suite section of the hospital was completely different from the regular floors. The walls were covered in expensive artwork. The floor was marble. Everything looked fancy and rich. Lily followed the voices to a large room at the end of the hallway. The door was partially open, and through it she could see at least 20 people crowded inside. Doctors were examining papers and arguing with each other. Nurses were adjusting medical equipment. And in the center of it all was a hospital bed. In that bed lay a young man who couldn't have been more than 25 years old. Even from the doorway, Lily could see he looked terrible. His skin was pale and covered in sweat. His breathing was labored. Medical machines beeped and whirred around him. His liver function is declining rapidly, one doctor said, staring at a computer screen. Blood pressure dropping again, a nurse announced. We've tested for every known toxin, every disease, every possible condition, another doctor said, frustration clear in his voice. Nothing explains this combination of symptoms. Mrs. Reynolds stood near the bed holding her son's hand, because Lily could now see that this was her son. The resemblance was clear, even with him being so sick. Tears streamed down Mrs. Reynolds' face. Please, she begged the doctors, please save him, he's all I have. Money is no object, I'll pay anything. Mrs. Reynolds, an older doctor, said gently, we're doing everything we can. We've consulted with specialists around the world, but we can't treat what we can't diagnose. A younger doctor spoke up. His symptoms started 3 days ago, correct? Sudden onset of nausea, dizziness, confusion. Yes, Mrs. Reynolds said. He was perfectly healthy. He had just returned from a business trip to Seattle. He came home, had dinner, and then started feeling sick. By morning, he could barely stand. Now, her voice broke. We need to consider the possibility that this is something completely new, another doctor suggested. A virus we haven't seen before, or a genetic condition that's suddenly activated. Lily stood in the doorway, taking in everything. She knew she shouldn't be there. She knew she could get in big trouble, but something kept her rooted to the spot. She watched the doctors work, watched Mrs. Reynolds cry, watched the young man in the bed fighting for his life. Then Lily's eyes drifted to the corner of the room. There, on a small table, sat a bouquet of roses in a crystal vase. But these weren't the roses Mrs. Reynolds had just bought from Lily. These were different, fancier, more elaborate. They had been there longer. Some of the petals were starting to wilt. Next to the roses was a gift basket wrapped in cellophane, expensive chocolates, fancy cheeses, crackers, and a bottle of wine. The kind of gift basket rich people gave each other. But something about that basket bothered Lily. She couldn't quite explain what it was. She had excellent eyesight. Her teacher had always praised her for noticing small details that others missed, and something about that basket was wrong. She squinted, trying to see better from the doorway. The basket was partially unwrapped. Some of the chocolates were gone. The cheese had been cut into. Someone had been eating from it. Then Lily saw it, small dark spots on the cheese, almost invisible unless you were really looking. They looked like Mold? No, not quite. They looked like tiny specks of dirt or dust, but darker, and there was a strange residue around the rim of one of the opened chocolate packages. Lily's mind raced. Her mother had taught her about food safety. Sarah had worked in a restaurant before getting sick, and she had drilled into Lily the importance of checking food carefully. Never eat anything that looks wrong, she had always said. And never trust food that's been sitting out too long, especially fancy food that's supposed to be refrigerated. The cheese in that basket should have been refrigerated, but it was sitting out at room temperature, and those dark spots. "Excuse me," Lily said softly from the doorway. Nobody heard her. The doctors were too busy arguing about treatment options. "Excuse me," Lily said louder. A nurse turned and saw her. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" Suddenly, everyone's attention was on Lily. 20 pairs of eyes stared at the small, wet girl standing in the doorway of the private suite. "I'm sorry for interrupting," Lily said, her voice shaking with nervousness, "but I think I know what's wrong with him." Several doctors laughed, not in a mean way but in a disbelieving way. A security guard appeared behind Lily, ready to escort her out. "Sweetheart," the older doctor said kindly, "we appreciate your concern, but this is a very serious medical situation. We need you to leave now." "But the cheese," Lily insisted, pointing at the gift basket. "Look at the cheese, it has black spots on it." Mrs. Reynolds looked at the basket, confused. "That's just a gift basket his business partner sent. What does that have to do with anything?" "When did he start eating from it?" Lily asked urgently. Mrs. Reynolds thought for a moment. He opened it the day he came home. He said he was hungry from the flight and had some cheese and crackers before dinner. Why does this matter?" Lily walked into the room, ignoring the guard trying to grab her shoulder. She went straight to the basket and pointed at the cheese. "See these spots? My mama worked in a restaurant. She taught me that cheese with spots like this isn't just old, it's poisoned." "Poisoned?" A doctor moved closer to look. "Young lady, we've already tested for toxins. We found nothing." "But did you test the food?" Lily asked. "Did you test what he ate?" The doctors looked at each other. In all their sophisticated testing, checking his blood, his organs, his genetic markers, nobody had thought to check the actual food he had consumed. They had asked about his diet but hadn't physically tested anything. One of the younger doctors pulled on medical gloves and carefully picked up the cheese. Under the bright lights of the hospital room, with everyone now paying attention, the dark spots became more visible. So did a slight shimmering residue on the surface of the cheese. "My God," the doctor whispered, "this needs to go to the lab immediately." "What is it?" Mrs. Reynolds demanded. "I'm not certain yet, but if this child is right," the doctor looked at Lily with new respect, "we might be looking at deliberate poisoning. These spots and this residue, they're not natural. Someone added something to this food." The room erupted into controlled chaos. Doctors started barking orders. The gift basket was carefully sealed in medical bags. Someone called down to the hospital lab. Another person called the police. Mrs. Reynolds grabbed Lily's shoulders. "Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure?" Lily nodded. "My mama made me learn about food safety. She said the worst poisons don't smell bad or taste bad, they just make little marks on food that most people don't notice. These marks look like the picture she showed me in her food safety book." 20 minutes later, the lab called back. The head doctor answered the phone, listened intently, then turned pale. "It's ricin," he said quietly. "The cheese was laced with ricin powder, enough to kill someone his size within 4 days." Ricin? Lily had heard that word before on the news. It was one of the deadliest poisons in the world, made from castor beans. There was no antidote, but if caught early enough, supportive care could help the body fight it off. "How much time does he have?" Mrs. Reynolds asked, her voice barely a whisper. "If we start aggressive treatment right now, if we flush his system and support his organs, he might make it, but we need to act fast." The doctors immediately went to work with renewed purpose. Now that they knew what they were fighting, they could fight it properly. IVs were adjusted, new medications were administered. The young man was moved to intensive care for round-the-clock monitoring. Through it all, Lily stood quietly in the corner, watching. Mrs. Reynolds hadn't let go of her hand. "What's your name?" Mrs. Reynolds asked gently. "Lily Chen, ma'am." "Lily, you just saved my son's life." 20 of the world's best doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong, and a 7-year-old girl spotted it in seconds. "How can I ever thank you?" Lily thought about her mother at home, probably worried sick about where she was. She thought about the medicine they needed and the rent that was due. But looking at Mrs. Reynolds' grateful, tear-stained face, Lily simply said, "I'm just glad I could help, ma'am. I hope your son gets better." A police detective arrived 30 minutes later along with FBI agents. The gift basket was evidence in an attempted murder case. They took statements from everyone, including Lily. They were particularly interested in who had sent the basket. "His business partner, Thomas Crawford," Mrs. Reynolds told them. "They've been partners for 3 years building tech startups together. Thomas sent this basket as a welcome home gift after my son's business trip." "And where is Mr. Crawford now?" the detective asked. I don't know. He hasn't answered his phone all day. I called him when my son got sick, but he never responded." The detective and agents exchanged meaningful looks. "We'll need to speak with Mr. Crawford immediately." As the investigation began to unfold, a nurse finally convinced Lily that she needed to call her mother. Sarah Chen answered on the first ring, her voice frantic with worry. "Lily, where are you? It's almost 9 o'clock. "I'm at the hospital, Mama. I'm okay. Something happened and I helped someone and." "You're at the hospital. Are you hurt?" "No, Mama, I'm fine. Actually, I made $38 today. We can get your medicine and pay some of the rent." Mrs. Reynolds gently took the phone from Lily. "Mrs. Chen, my name is Elizabeth Reynolds. Your daughter is safe and she's just done something absolutely remarkable. I'm sending my car to pick you up and bring you here. We need to talk." 20 minutes later, Sarah Chen arrived at the hospital in the same black limousine that had brought Mrs. Reynolds. Despite being sick and weak, Sarah had gotten dressed and come immediately when she heard Lily was at a hospital. When mother and daughter were reunited, they hugged so tightly that several nurses had to wipe tears from their eyes. Sarah checked Lily all over, making sure she wasn't hurt, then held her at arm's length. "You gave me such a scare," Sarah said, "but the lady in the car told me what you did. She said you saved someone's life." "I just noticed something the doctors missed, Mama. You taught me to always check food carefully, remember?" Sarah pulled Lily close again. "I'm so proud of you. Baby, so very proud." Mrs. Reynolds approached them. "Mrs. Chen, I understand you've been unwell, and I understand Lily has been selling flowers to support you both." Sarah looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I know it's not right for such a young child to work, but I've been too sick to maintain employment and we have bills." "Please," Mrs. Reynolds interrupted gently. "Don't apologize. What Lily has been doing shows incredible strength and love. But I'd like to help if you'll let me. Your daughter saved my son's life. The least I can do is make sure both of you are taken care of." "Ma'am, we can't accept charity," Sarah said with dignity. "We appreciate the thought, but—" "It's not charity," Mrs. Reynolds said firmly. "It's gratitude. My son Ethan is my whole world. His father died when he was young, so it's just been the two of us. If I had lost him—" her voice broke. "If I had lost him because no one noticed what a sharp-eyed 7-year-old spotted, I would never have forgiven myself. Please let me help." Before Sarah could respond, a commotion erupted near the intensive care unit. Ethan Reynolds was awake. Against all odds, with the aggressive treatment now that doctors knew what they were fighting, he was conscious and asking for his mother. Mrs. Reynolds rushed to his side with Lily and Sarah following at a respectful distance. Through the glass window of the ICU, they could see mother and son reunited. Ethan was weak and pale, but he was alive and alert. After a few minutes, Mrs. Reynolds came back out. Her face was transformed with joy. "He's going to make it. The doctors say if we had gone even a few more hours without the right treatment, it would have been too late, but Lily gave us the time we needed." She turned to Lily. "My son wants to meet you. He wants to thank the little girl who saved his life." Lily felt nervous but excited. She was allowed into the ICU, which smelled like medicine and cleaning products. Ethan Reynolds looked at her with tired but grateful eyes. "So you're my hero," he said, his voice weak but warm. "I hear you spotted something 20 brilliant doctors missed." "I just noticed the spots on the cheese, sir," Lily said shyly. "My mama taught me about food safety." "Well, your mama taught you well," Ethan smiled. "I understand you've been selling flowers to help her. That's pretty amazing for someone your age." "She needs medicine, sir, and we have rent to pay, but today was a good day. I made enough money for the medicine and maybe the rent too." Ethan looked at his mother, then back at Lily. "What if I told you that you never have to worry about medicine or rent again?" Lily's eyes widened. "Sir, my mom told me she wants to help your family. I want that too, but more than that, I want to make sure what you did today is properly recognized. You showed observation skills and quick thinking that saved a life. That's extraordinary." Over the next hour, while Ethan rested and recovered, Mrs. Reynolds sat with Sarah and Lily in a private waiting room. She explained her proposal. She would pay for all of Sarah's medical treatment, no expenses spared, until Sarah was healthy again. She would pay their rent for the next 2 years. She would set up an education fund for Lily that would cover private school through high school and eventually college. "But there's one more thing," Mrs. Reynolds said. "When Sarah is well enough to work again, I'd like to offer her a position with my company. We run several businesses, including restaurants and catering services. Someone with your background and work ethic would be valuable to us." Sarah's hands shook as she processed this information. "Mrs. Reynolds, this is too much. This is what your daughter earned by being observant and brave," Mrs. Reynolds said firmly. "And it's what you earned by raising such a remarkable child under incredibly difficult circumstances." Sarah began to cry, not sad tears but tears of relief and gratitude. For months she had been carrying the weight of their survival on her sick, tired shoulders. For months she had felt like a failure as a mother, unable to provide for her daughter. And now, because of Lily's sharp eyes and good heart, everything was changing. Lily hugged her mother tight. "It's okay, Mama, everything's going to be okay now." Outside the hospital, the rain had finally stopped. The police and FBI were already tracking down Thomas Crawford, who had apparently fled the city when he realized Ethan was still alive. They would later discover that Crawford had been embezzling money from their shared business, and had decided that killing his partner was easier than facing the consequences of his theft. The ricin had been carefully applied to the cheese in the gift basket, designed to look like an innocent welcome home present. But Crawford hadn't counted on a 7-year-old flower girl with sharp eyes and a good education from her mother. As the night turned into early morning, Lily finally got to go home. Mrs. Reynolds' driver took them in the limousine, which made Lily feel like a princess. Her bucket of roses, now empty, sat beside her. She had made more than $38 today, though. She had made a difference. A real, life-saving difference. "Mama," Lily said as they rode through the now quiet streets. "Yes, baby. Do you think other people miss important things because they're not really looking?" Sarah smiled and stroked her daughter's wet hair. "I think most people go through life so busy and distracted that they miss a lot. But you, my sweet Lily, you notice things, you pay attention. That's a special gift." "I only noticed because you taught me," Lily said. "You taught me to always look carefully at food. You taught me to be observant. You taught me to care about others." "And you taught me something tonight," Sarah replied. "You taught me that even when things seem hopeless, even when you're small and the problems are big, you can still make a difference. You can still matter." When they arrived home, their tiny apartment seemed different somehow. It was still small, the furniture was still old, the paint was still peeling, but it felt warmer, safer, filled with hope in a way it hadn't before. Sarah tucked Lily into bed, something she hadn't had the energy to do in weeks. As Lily closed her eyes, her mother sang her a soft lullaby. "Mama," Lily murmured, already half asleep. "Yes, baby. Tomorrow, can we use some of the money to buy roses again? I think I want to keep selling them, even if we don't need the money anymore." "Why's that?" "Because flowers make people happy, and I like making people happy." Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead. "You make me happy, Lily, every single day." As Lily drifted off to sleep, she dreamed of roses and hospitals and a young man who had been dying until she looked through a window and saw what 20 doctors had missed. She dreamed of her mother, healthy and strong again. She dreamed of a future that suddenly seemed bright and full of possibilities. In the intensive care unit of Memorial Hospital, Ethan Reynolds slept peacefully for the first time in 3 days. His body was fighting off the poison, helped by the aggressive treatment that had started just in time. His mother sat beside his bed, holding his hand, thanking God and a sharp-eyed little girl for this second chance. And in a small Chicago apartment, Lily Chen slept the sleep of someone who had done something truly important. She had proven that wisdom isn't about age or education or expensive degrees. Sometimes wisdom is just about paying attention. Sometimes saving a life is just about noticing what others miss. The rain had stopped, the night was quiet, and somewhere in that city, tomorrow was coming with all its new possibilities and changes. But Lily's story was far from over. The real surprises were yet to come. The morning sun broke through the clouds with unusual brightness, casting golden light across Chicago streets as if the city itself was celebrating a new beginning. Lily woke to the smell of pancakes, a luxury she hadn't experienced in months. She rubbed her eyes and stumbled into their tiny kitchen to find her mother standing at the stove, actually cooking breakfast. Sarah looked tired but determined, her movements slower than they used to be but filled with a happiness that had been absent for so long. "Good morning, my hero," Sarah said, turning to smile at her daughter. The circles under her eyes were still dark, her skin still pale from months of illness, but something had shifted in her expression. Hope had returned to her face like the sun breaking through storm clouds. Lily climbed onto one of their mismatched kitchen chairs, her legs swinging beneath her because her feet didn't quite reach the floor. "Mama, you should be resting, you're still sick." "I'm feeling a bit better this morning," Sarah said, though Lily could see the slight tremor in her hands as she flipped the pancakes. "Besides, my daughter saved someone's life last night. That deserves a celebration breakfast, even if it's just pancakes and the last of our syrup." They ate together in comfortable silence, the kind of peaceful quiet that only exists between people who truly understand each other. Lily told her mother more details about the night before, about how scared Mrs. Reynolds had looked, about how the doctors had argued with each other, about the exact pattern of spots she had noticed on the cheese. Sarah listened intently, occasionally reaching across the table to squeeze Lily's hand. "You know what impressed me most?" Sarah said as they finished eating. "Not just that you noticed something wrong, but that you had the courage to speak up. Those were important, powerful people in that room. Most adults would have been too intimidated to say anything, but you believed in what you saw and you spoke up anyway. That takes real bravery." Before Lily could respond, there was a knock at their apartment door. Sarah and Lily exchanged surprised glances. They rarely had visitors and never this early in the morning. Sarah moved cautiously to the door, checking through the peephole before opening it slightly. Standing in the hallway was a man in a dark suit holding a briefcase. Behind him stood two other people, a woman with a camera and another man carrying what looked like legal documents. For a moment, Sarah's protective instincts kicked in and she started to close the door, worried this had something to do with their overdue rent. "Mrs. Chen?" the man in the suit said quickly. "Please don't be alarmed. My name is David Harrison. I'm Mrs. Elizabeth Reynolds' personal attorney. She sent me here this morning with some paperwork that requires your signature." Sarah opened the door a bit wider but kept herself positioned between these strangers and Lily. Paperwork for what? David Harrison smiled warmly. May we come in? I promise this is good news, very good news actually. Reluctantly, Sarah let them into the small apartment. The place looked even more cramped with 5 people inside it. Lily noticed the woman with the camera looking around at their modest furnishings, the peeling wallpaper, the crack in the ceiling that Sarah had tried to cover with duct tape. The woman's expression wasn't judgmental though, it was sympathetic, understanding. David Harrison cleared off a space on their small table and opened his briefcase. He pulled out several thick folders and spread them out carefully. Mrs. Reynolds wanted me to come first thing this morning to begin arranging everything she discussed with you last night. She's a woman who believes in acting quickly when something matters to her, and your daughter matters to her a great deal. He opened the first folder. This is the contract for full medical coverage for you, Mrs. Chen. Mrs. Reynolds has arranged for you to be seen by the best specialists at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. She's already scheduled your first appointment for this afternoon at 2 o'clock. A car will pick you up at 1:30. Sarah's hand went to her mouth. This afternoon, but I don't understand. We only met her last night. Why is she doing all of this so quickly? Because her son Ethan is awake and improving, but the doctors say if treatment had been delayed even a few more hours, he would have died, David explained. Your daughter gave them the time they needed. Mrs. Reynolds doesn't take that lightly. She's also not the kind of person who makes promises she doesn't intend to keep immediately. He opened the second folder. This is the housing arrangement. Mrs. Reynolds owns several properties throughout Chicago. She's offering you a 3-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park, rent-free for the next 5 years. It's in a safe neighborhood with excellent schools nearby. You can move in as early as next week, as soon as the current cleaning and minor renovations are complete. Lily gasped. She had seen Lincoln Park once when a school field trip took them to the zoo. The houses there were beautiful, with actual yards and clean streets. People walked dogs on sidewalks that didn't have cracks or weeds growing through them. She had never imagined living somewhere like that. Sarah was shaking her head in disbelief. Mr. Harrison, this is too much. We can't possibly accept all of this. It's not right. Mrs. Chen, David said gently, I understand this feels overwhelming. But please understand something about Elizabeth Reynolds. She's a woman who built a fortune through hard work and smart decisions. She's also a woman who nearly lost the only family she has left because 20 expensive doctors with fancy degrees missed something a 7-year-old child noticed. That kind of observation, that kind of intelligence and courage is rare. She's not offering you charity. She's recognizing exceptional value when she sees it. He opened the third folder. This is the Education Trust Fund for Lily. It's structured to cover private school tuition starting next fall, plus all expenses including books, supplies, uniforms, and extracurricular activities. The fund continues through high school and includes full college tuition for any accredited university in the United States. There's also a monthly stipend for Lily's personal expenses as she grows up. Sarah's legs seemed to give out and she sat down heavily on one of the kitchen chairs. Tears were streaming down her face. I don't know what to say. I've been struggling for so long, trying so hard to keep us afloat, and now you can stop struggling and start healing, David finished for her. Mrs. Reynolds also wanted me to tell you that the job offer she mentioned is real. Once you're healthy, there's a position waiting for you as a food safety consultant for her restaurant division. The starting salary is $75,000 a year with full benefits. Lily didn't fully understand money yet, but she saw her mother's reaction and knew this was a life-changing amount. Sarah was openly sobbing now, and Lily moved to hug her, wrapping her small arms around her mother's shaking shoulders. The woman with the camera, who had been silent until now, spoke up softly. Mrs. Chen, my name is Jennifer Park. I'm a journalist with the Chicago Tribune. Mrs. Reynolds contacted my editor early this morning about writing a story on what happened last night. The story of how a 7-year-old flower girl saved a billionaire's life when 20 doctors couldn't. It's an incredible human interest story, and we'd like to run it with your permission. Sarah wiped her eyes and looked at Jennifer with confusion. A newspaper story about Lily. Not just about Lily, Jennifer clarified. About both of you, about a single mother fighting illness while trying to raise her daughter, about a child who took on adult responsibilities to help her family, about observation and courage and how sometimes the smallest people can make the biggest difference. It's a story that I think would inspire a lot of people. Sarah looked at Lily. Baby, what do you think? Do you want to be in the newspaper? Lily thought carefully. She remembered how embarrassed she sometimes felt when other kids at school asked why she was always so tired, why her clothes were old and worn, why she couldn't afford school lunch. A newspaper story would mean everyone knowing about their struggles, but it would also mean everyone knowing that she had helped save someone's life, that she had done something important. Will it help other people? Lily asked Jennifer. Will it maybe help other kids who are in situations like mine? Jennifer smiled. I think it absolutely could. Sometimes people don't realize how many children are out there working to help their families. Sometimes people don't see the struggles happening right in front of them. Your story could open eyes. It could change perspectives. Then yes, Lily said firmly, let's do the story. Over the next 2 hours, Jennifer interviewed both Lily and Sarah, asking questions about their life, their struggles, and the events of the previous night. The other man, who turned out to be a professional photographer, took pictures of them in their apartment. He was respectful and kind, making sure they were comfortable with every shot. At noon, David Harrison finished collecting Sarah's signatures on all the necessary documents. He handed her a credit card and explained that Mrs. Reynolds had opened an account with $10,000 for immediate expenses. Buy yourselves some new clothes, get groceries, handle any urgent bills. Consider it an advance on the new life you're starting. After they left, Sarah and Lily sat in their small apartment surrounded by signed contracts and the promise of a completely different future. Sarah kept touching the credit card as if it might disappear, as if this might all be a dream they would wake up from. Mama, Lily said quietly, are you happy? Sarah pulled her daughter into her lap, something she hadn't had the strength to do in months. I'm beyond happy, baby. I'm overwhelmed and grateful and still processing that this is real. But yes, I'm happy. More than that, I'm relieved. For the first time in almost a year, I'm not terrified about how we'll survive tomorrow. That afternoon, Mrs. Reynolds' driver arrived in the black limousine to take Sarah to her medical appointment. Mrs. Reynolds had insisted that Lily come along, saying she wanted Lily to visit Ethan again. As they drove through Chicago streets, Lily pressed her face against the window, watching the city pass by. Everything looked different now. The same buildings and streets that had seemed gray and threatening yesterday now appeared full of possibility. At the hospital, they were taken directly to Ethan Reynolds' private suite. He was sitting up in bed now, looking significantly better than he had the night before. His color had improved and his eyes were bright and alert. Mrs. Reynolds was there too, looking well-rested for the first time since Lily had met her. Lily, Ethan called out when he saw her, come here, I want to properly thank my hero. Lily approached the bed shyly. Up close and conscious, Ethan looked younger than she had initially thought. He had kind eyes and a warm smile that reminded her of her father before he had disappeared. How are you feeling, sir? Lily asked politely. Much better, thanks to you, Ethan said. The doctors say I'm going to make a full recovery. They're still monitoring my liver and kidneys, but all the tests this morning showed improvement. They said if you hadn't spotted that poisoned cheese when you did, I'd probably be dead right now. Lily didn't know what to say to that. The weight of it, the reality that her observation had literally saved a human life, felt too big for her 7-year-old mind to fully grasp. Ethan seemed to understand her silence. I know it's a lot to process. Trust me, I'm still processing it too. Waking up to learn that my business partner tried to kill me is not how I expected this week to go. Did the police find him? Lily asked. Mrs. Reynolds answered. They arrested Thomas Crawford at the airport early this morning. He was trying to fly to a country without an extradition treaty. The FBI found evidence that he'd been stealing from the company for over a year and had accumulated massive gambling debts. He thought killing Ethan would let him take over the business completely and cover up his crimes. That's terrible, Sarah said quietly. How could someone you trusted do something like that? That's the question I keep asking myself, Ethan admitted. Thomas and I were friends before we became business partners. I thought I knew him, but I guess you never really know what someone is capable of when they're desperate. The conversation shifted to lighter topics. Ethan asked Lily about school, about her favorite subjects, about what she wanted to be when she grew up. Lily told him she had always loved science and nature, that she liked learning about how things work and why things happen the way they do. You have a scientist's mind, Ethan observed. You observe, you question, you draw conclusions based on evidence. That's exactly what you did last night. You saw the evidence on that cheese and you drew the correct conclusion even when nobody else did. While they talked, a nurse came in to take Sarah to her medical consultation. Mrs. Reynolds went with her, leaving Lily alone with Ethan and a security guard who stood discreetly by the door. "Can I tell you something?" Ethan said once they were relatively alone. "Something I haven't told my mom yet because I don't want to worry her." Lily nodded, feeling honored that he would trust her with a secret. "The reason Thomas was able to poison me so easily is because I've been careless," Ethan confessed. "I've been so focused on building businesses and making money that I stopped paying attention to what really matters. I stopped noticing the little details. I stopped being observant, and it almost killed me." He paused, looking out the window at the city skyline. "You're 7 years old and you notice things that I, at 24, have trained myself to ignore. You saw spots on cheese. How many times have I eaten food without really looking at it? How many times have I rushed through life without paying attention to what's right in front of me?" "My mama says most people don't really see things," Lily offered. "She says they look but they don't see." "Your mama is very wise," Ethan said. "And she raised a daughter who sees. That's a gift, Lily. Don't ever lose it. Don't ever let yourself become so busy or distracted that you stop noticing the details." Over the next hour, Ethan told Lily about his work building technology companies, about apps and software that helped people connect and communicate. He explained it in simple terms that she could understand, and Lily found herself fascinated. She asked questions, good questions that made Ethan smile and sometimes pause to think before answering. "You know what?" Ethan said eventually. "When you're older, if you're interested, I'd love to have you intern at one of my companies. Someone with your observation skills and natural curiosity would be incredibly valuable in technology development." "Really?" Lily's eyes went wide. "You'd want me to work for you?" "Want you to? Lily, you saved my life. I'd be honored to work with you someday." He grinned. "Besides, I need people around me who actually pay attention. Clearly my current system of surrounding myself with fancy credentials and impressive resumes isn't working out so well." When Sarah and Mrs. Reynolds returned an hour later, Sarah looked lighter somehow, as if a physical weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The doctors had run comprehensive tests and started her on new treatments. They were optimistic that with proper care, she could make a full recovery within 6 months. "6 months," Sarah kept repeating. "They said 6 months and I could be completely healthy again. I'd almost given up hope that I'd ever feel normal again." Mrs. Reynolds put her arm around Sarah's shoulders. "You're going to be fine. We're going to make sure of it." As the afternoon turned to evening, the Tribune journalist Jennifer Park returned with a photographer. She wanted to take pictures of Lily with Ethan for the article. They posed together, Ethan sitting up in his hospital bed and Lily standing beside him, both of them smiling genuinely. The photographer captured something special in that moment, the unlikely friendship between a billionaire who had almost died and the flower girl who had saved him. "This is going to be front-page material," Jennifer told them excitedly. "The city is going to fall in love with this story." She had no idea how right she was. When the article ran 2 days later, it exploded across Chicago and then across the country. The headline read, "7-year-old flower girl saves billionaire's life after 20 doctors missed the clues." The story detailed Lily's difficult circumstances, her courage in selling flowers to support her sick mother, and her sharp observation that had cracked a murder mystery. The response was overwhelming. The Tribune's phone lines were flooded with calls from people wanting to help. Donations poured in for Sarah and Lily even though they no longer needed the money. Local news stations picked up the story. National news networks contacted Jennifer for interviews. Within a week, Lily Chen became one of the most famous children in America. But fame brought complications that neither Lily nor her mother had anticipated. Their apartment address was somehow leaked online, and people started showing up at their door. Most were well-meaning, bringing gifts and flowers and wanting to meet the hero girl. But some were reporters who didn't respect their privacy, shouting questions through the door and taking pictures through their windows. Mrs. Reynolds acted quickly. She moved Sarah and Lily into a hotel suite for their safety and accelerated the timeline on their new apartment in Lincoln Park. Instead of moving in next week, they would move in tomorrow. She also hired private security to protect them from the overwhelming attention. "I'm so sorry," Mrs. Reynolds apologized when she met them at the hotel. "I didn't anticipate the story would blow up like this. I thought it would be a nice local article, maybe bring some positive attention to the issue of children in poverty. I didn't realize it would become a national sensation." "It's not your fault," Sarah assured her. "And honestly, if this attention helps shine a light on how many kids are struggling like Lily was, then maybe some good comes from it." The next day, they moved into their new apartment in Lincoln Park. Lily had never seen anything like it. The place had 3 actual bedrooms, each with its own closet. There were 2 full bathrooms with showers that had hot water and good water pressure. The kitchen was modern and clean with new appliances. The living room had space for a real couch and a television. Windows looked out onto a tree-lined street where children played safely in a small park. "Mama, is this really ours?" Lily whispered as they walked through the empty rooms. "We get to live here." Sarah was crying again, happy tears that seemed to come easily these days. "Yes, baby, this is our new home." Mrs. Reynolds had arranged for furniture to be delivered that afternoon. She had also hired an interior decorator to help Sarah choose everything, but she made it clear that all decisions were Sarah's to make. "This is your home," Mrs. Reynolds insisted. "It should reflect your taste, your style, your choices." By evening, the apartment was transformed. There was a comfortable couch and chairs in the living room. Sarah's bedroom had a real bed with a proper mattress, not the old futon she'd been sleeping on. Lily's room was painted a soft yellow at her request, with a new bed, a desk for homework, and shelves for books. The third bedroom was set up as an office where Sarah could rest and recover while handling administrative tasks for her future job. That night, Lily lay in her new bed in her new room in their new apartment, staring at the ceiling. Everything had changed so fast. Just 3 days ago, she had been standing in the rain selling roses, worried about how they would pay for medicine and rent. Now they were living in a beautiful apartment in a safe neighborhood. Her mother was getting treatment from the best doctors, and their financial worries were over. It felt like a fairy tale. But Lily had read enough fairy tales to know that they often had complications and challenges. She wondered what challenges this new life would bring. She didn't have to wonder long. The next morning, there was a knock at their apartment door. Sarah answered it to find a woman in an expensive business suit holding an official-looking envelope. "Sarah Chen," the woman asked formally. "Yes, that's me." "You've been served." The woman handed her the envelope and walked away before Sarah could ask any questions. Sarah opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a legal document. As she read it, her face went pale. Lily, watching from the kitchen, felt her stomach twist with worry. "Mama, what is it?" Sarah looked up, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and fear. "It's from your father's family, the family we've never met because they disowned him for marrying me. They're suing for custody of you. They claim that I'm an unfit mother and that you should be raised by them instead." The fairy tale, it seemed, was about to get complicated. The legal document trembled in Sarah's hands as she read it again, hoping somehow the words would change, that she had misunderstood what it said. But the meaning remained brutally clear. Richard Chen's parents, James and Patricia Chen, were filing for full custody of Lily, claiming that Sarah was an unfit mother who had endangered their granddaughter by allowing her to sell flowers on the street instead of attending school regularly. The lawsuit cited Sarah's illness, their previous poverty, and what it called neglectful parenting that forced a minor child into labor. Sarah sank onto their new couch, the legal papers scattering across the coffee table. Lily came to sit beside her, taking her mother's hand. At 7 years old, Lily didn't fully understand legal custody or lawsuits, but she understood the fear in her mother's eyes. She understood that someone was trying to take her away. "Mama, who are these people?" Lily asked quietly. "I thought Daddy's family didn't want anything to do with us." Sarah took a shaky breath, trying to compose herself. "When I met your father, he was working construction to pay his way through night school. His parents wanted him to marry a woman they had chosen, someone from a wealthy Chinese family with the right connections. But your father fell in love with me instead, a waitress from a poor neighborhood. His parents said if he married me, they would disown him, cut him off completely." "What does disown mean?" Lily asked. "It means they told him he was no longer their son. They refused to speak to him or see him. They didn't come to our wedding. When you were born, I sent them a letter with your picture, hoping they would want to meet their grandchild. They sent the letter back unopened." Sarah's voice was bitter with old hurt. "For 7 years, they pretended we didn't exist. Now suddenly, because you're famous, because the whole country knows your name, they want you." Lily's small hand tightened around her mother's fingers. "I don't want to live with strangers, Mama. I want to stay with you." "And you will, baby, I promise you will." Sarah pulled Lily into a fierce hug, but inside her heart was racing with panic. Legal battles required lawyers, and lawyers were expensive. Mrs. Reynolds had been incredibly generous, but Sarah couldn't ask her to fight a custody battle too. That would be too much, even for someone as kind as Elizabeth Reynolds. As if summoned by thought alone, Sarah's new phone rang. It was Mrs. Reynolds calling. Sarah had given her the number just yesterday, and already she was using it. "Sarah, I just heard about the lawsuit," Mrs. Reynolds said without preamble. "My attorney David Harrison has connections throughout the legal community. Word travels fast. How are you holding up?" "I'm terrified," Sarah admitted honestly. "These people ignored us for 7 years, and now they want to take my daughter away." "That's not going to happen," Mrs. Reynolds said firmly. "I'm sending David to your apartment right now. We're going to fight this, and we're going to win." "Mrs. Reynolds, I can't ask you to pay for another lawyer. You've already done so much." "Sarah, listen to me carefully," Mrs. Reynolds said, her voice gentle but insistent. "Lily saved my son's life. Ethan is all I have in this world, and your daughter gave him back to me. There is no amount of money, no amount of help that could ever fully repay that debt. But more than that, I've got to know you and Lily over these past few days. You're good people who have been dealt a bad hand. I'm not going to stand by and watch someone take that child away from the mother who raised her with such love and courage. So please let me help. Let David help. This is what he does, and he's the best in the city." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face again. She seemed to cry constantly these days, though now they were tears of gratitude rather than despair. Thank you so much." David Harrison arrived at their apartment within an hour, his briefcase full of legal documents and his expression serious but confident. He sat at their kitchen table and reviewed the custody petition carefully, making notes on a yellow legal pad. "This is a nuisance lawsuit," he said finally. "They don't have a legitimate case for custody. Lily is well cared for, loved, and by all accounts thriving despite the difficult circumstances you've faced. The fact that she was selling flowers doesn't constitute neglect. It shows resourcefulness and family loyalty. Many children throughout history have contributed to their family's income, especially during hard times." "Then why are they doing this?" Sarah asked. "If they can't win, why try?" David looked at her seriously. "Because they think they can intimidate you into giving up. They know that fighting a custody battle is expensive and emotionally draining. They're betting that you'll either surrender Lily to them or agree to some kind of shared custody arrangement just to make the lawsuit go away. These are wealthy people who are used to getting what they want through pressure and money." "But we have Mrs. Reynolds helping us," Lily pointed out, speaking up for the first time. "She has money too." David smiled at her. "You're absolutely right, Lily, and that's exactly why we're going to win." The Chens thought they were dealing with a poor, sick woman who couldn't afford to fight back. They didn't anticipate that you would have one of the most powerful families in Chicago standing beside you. Over the next week, the custody battle became public knowledge. The media, which had celebrated Lily as a hero, now scrutinized every aspect of her life and her mother's parenting. Conservative commentators argued that allowing a 7-year-old to sell flowers showed poor judgment. Liberal commentators countered that it showed the failure of social systems to support struggling families. Everyone had an opinion about Sarah Chen's parenting, and most of them were shared loudly on television and social media. Through it all, Sarah tried to shield Lily from the worst of it. She didn't let her watch the news or read articles online. But Lily heard things at school anyway. She had started attending Lincoln Park Elementary, a private school that Mrs. Reynolds had enrolled her in. Most of the kids were kind and curious about the famous girl in their class, but some repeated things their parents had said at home. "My dad says your mom should have gotten a job instead of making you work," one boy named Christopher told Lily during recess one day. "He says it's wrong for kids to have to earn money." Lily felt her face get hot with anger and embarrassment. "My mama was sick, she couldn't work. I sold flowers because I wanted to help her, not because she made me." "That's what my mom said too," a girl named Rachel chimed in supportively. "She said you were brave and that you love your mom very much. She said people who criticize don't understand what it's like to be poor." The argument attracted other children and soon a crowd had gathered. Lily found herself defending her mother to kids who didn't understand, who had never worried about rent or medicine or where their next meal would come from. It was exhausting and hurtful, and that night Lily cried in her mother's arms. "I just want everything to go back to normal," Lily sobbed. "I just want to be a regular kid again." Sarah held her daughter close, feeling helpless and angry. This attention, this scrutiny, this lawsuit, it was all too much for a 7-year-old to handle. She had been so grateful for Mrs. Reynolds' help, so relieved to have their financial problems solved, but she hadn't anticipated how complicated their lives would become. The next morning, Ethan Reynolds showed up at their apartment unexpectedly. He was out of the hospital now, recovering at home but still weak. He shouldn't have been traveling around the city, but he had come anyway. "I heard about what happened at school," he told Lily, sitting down beside her on the couch. "I heard about the things other kids said to you." "How did you hear about that?" Lily asked, surprised. "My mom has been keeping tabs on how you're doing. She cares about you and so do I," Ethan smiled gently. "I wanted to tell you something important. Are you listening?" Lily nodded. "When I was about your age, maybe a little older, my dad died in a car accident. Suddenly my mom and I had all this money, more than we knew what to do with, and people treated us differently. Some people were extra nice because they wanted something from us. Other people were mean because they were jealous or because they thought we didn't deserve what we had. It was really confusing and sometimes it hurt." "What did you do?" Lily asked. "I learned that I couldn't control what other people thought or said about me. I could only control how I responded to it. And I decided that the only opinions that mattered were the opinions of people who actually knew me and cared about me. Everyone else, their words were just noise." Ethan tapped Lily's chest gently. "You know who you are in here. You know you're a good person who loves her mom and who was brave enough to help someone when nobody else could. Don't let people who don't know you make you doubt that." Lily thought about his words carefully. "But what about the lawsuit? What if the judge believes I shouldn't have been selling flowers? What if they take me away from my mama?" "That's not going to happen," Ethan said firmly. "David Harrison is the best custody lawyer in Illinois. Plus, I'm going to testify at your hearing. I'm going to tell the judge exactly what kind of person you are and exactly what your observation skills and courage mean. A judge who hears the full story isn't going to take you away from the mother who raised such an incredible kid." The custody hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. In the meantime, David Harrison built their case meticulously. He gathered evidence of Sarah's love and devotion as a mother. He collected testimony from Lily's teachers about how well-adjusted and intelligent she was despite their previous circumstances. He documented Sarah's illness and how she had done everything possible to care for Lily even while sick. He prepared character witnesses, including Mrs. Reynolds and Ethan, who would testify about the kind of person Lily was and the kind of parenting that had produced such a remarkable child. The Chens, meanwhile, had hired an expensive legal team of their own. They argued that Lily deserved stability, that she deserved to grow up in a wealthy household with every advantage, that she deserved grandparents who could provide opportunities Sarah never could. They painted themselves as concerned family members who only wanted what was best for their granddaughter. But David discovered something interesting as he investigated James and Patricia Chen. They didn't just want Lily out of love or concern. They wanted her because of a trust fund. Richard Chen, Lily's father, had been the beneficiary of a substantial family trust that would have passed to him on his 30th birthday. When Richard disappeared and was presumed dead after a 7-year absence, that trust would normally be dissolved and the money returned to the family estate. However, if Richard had a living heir, a child, that trust would instead pass to his child on her 18th birthday. The trust was worth over $5 million. They don't want Lily, David explained to Sarah in a private meeting. They want control of that trust fund until she turns 18. If they have custody, they control the money and all investment decisions. They could drain that fund through management fees and expenses for Lily's care, leaving her with almost nothing by the time she's old enough to claim it. Sarah felt sick. They're willing to take my daughter away from me for money they don't even need since they're already wealthy. Some people are never satisfied with what they have, David said grimly. But this actually helps our case. I can demonstrate to the judge that their motivation isn't Lily's well-being, it's financial gain. That will undermine their entire argument. The day of the custody hearing arrived with cold autumn rain, as if the weather itself understood the gravity of the situation. Sarah dressed carefully in a conservative blue dress that Mrs. Reynolds had helped her choose. Lily wore a simple white blouse and navy skirt, looking small and nervous. They rode to the courthouse together in Mrs. Reynolds' car, with David Harrison reviewing last-minute details. The courtroom was smaller than Sarah had expected, less dramatic than the courtrooms she had seen on television. Judge Margaret Foster presided, a woman in her 60s with gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She looked at everyone with equal scrutiny, showing no favoritism to either side. James and Patricia Chen sat on the opposite side of the courtroom with their legal team. They were both in their 70s, dressed impeccably in expensive clothes. Patricia wore more jewelry than seemed appropriate for a courtroom. They looked at Lily with expressions that Sarah couldn't quite read. Was it longing, calculation, regret for the years they had missed? The hearing began with the Chen's attorney presenting their case. He was a smooth-talking man in his 50s who painted a picture of concerned grandparents who had made mistakes in the past but now wanted to provide their only grandchild with the stable, privileged life she deserved. My clients acknowledge that they made an error in judgment 7 years ago, the attorney said. They reacted poorly to their son's marriage and they've regretted that decision ever since. When their son disappeared, they wanted to reach out, but they were ashamed of how they had treated Sarah Chen. Now, seeing their granddaughter's face in the newspaper, hearing her story, they realize they can't waste any more time. They want to be part of Lily's life, to give her advantages that a single mother, no matter how well-meaning, simply cannot provide alone. He went on to describe the Chen's home, a mansion in the suburbs with its own library and music room. He talked about the private tutors they could provide, the cultural experiences, the international travel opportunities. He made it sound like Lily would be living in a fairy tale castle with loving grandparents who could give her the world. Then he shifted to criticizing Sarah. The evidence shows that Ms. Chen allowed her 7-year-old daughter to work on the streets, selling flowers to strangers late into the evening. While Ms. Chen's financial situation has recently improved due to the generosity of the Reynolds family, what happens if that support disappears? What happens when the media attention fades and Lily is no longer famous? Will she be back on the streets, selling flowers in the rain? My clients can offer permanent stability, not charity dependent on the continued goodwill of strangers. Sarah felt each word like a physical blow. She wanted to stand up and scream that she loved her daughter, that she had done the best she could, that working hard wasn't something to be ashamed of. But David had prepared her for this. She had to stay calm, had to trust the process. When it was their turn, David stood and began systematically dismantling the Chen's case. He presented evidence of the unopened letter Sarah had sent 7 years ago, proving that the Chens had deliberately chosen not to be part of Lily's life when it would have actually mattered. He showed the timeline of their sudden interest, which coincided perfectly with Lily's national fame and the revelation of the trust fund that would become hers. "Your Honor," David said, "the Chens didn't file for custody because they suddenly realized they missed their granddaughter. They filed because Lily Chen became famous and because they realized she's the heir to a $5 million trust fund that they could control if they gain custody. This isn't about love. This is about money and control." He called Sarah to the stand first. She answered questions about her parenting, her illness, and the decision to let Lily sell flowers. She explained everything honestly, holding nothing back. "I was sick, Your Honor," Sarah said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I was so sick I could barely get out of bed some days. We were behind on rent, running out of food, and I couldn't afford my medicine. Lily saw me suffering and she wanted to help. I didn't ask her to sell flowers. She came to me with the idea after her teacher suggested it. Was I supposed to tell my daughter no? Was I supposed to crush her spirit and tell her that her help didn't matter, that her desire to contribute to our family was wrong? Some would argue that you should have found another way," the Chen's attorney interjected during cross-examination. "Government assistance, charity organizations, anything except putting your child to work." "I tried everything," Sarah said firmly. "I applied for every assistance program available. We were on waiting lists. I reached out to charities, but resources are limited and there are many families in need. Meanwhile, bills don't wait, illness doesn't pause. My daughter saw a problem and found a solution. She showed resourcefulness, compassion, and maturity. I was proud of her then, and I'm proud of her now." Next, David called Lily to the stand. The judge looked concerned about putting such a young child through testimony, but David had prepared Lily carefully. She sat in the witness box looking small but composed, her feet dangling well above the floor. "Lily," David said gently, "can you tell the judge why you started selling flowers?" "Because my mama needed medicine and we didn't have enough money," Lily answered clearly. "She was sick and I wanted to help her feel better." "Did your mother force you to sell flowers?" "No, sir, it was my idea. My teacher told me her aunt sold flowers at the market and I thought maybe I could do that too." "Were you scared standing outside selling flowers?" Lily thought about that honestly. "Sometimes, but mostly I felt useful. I felt like I was helping my mama and that made me feel good." "Lily, do you know who those people are?" David pointed to James and Patricia Chen. "They're my daddy's parents, the ones who didn't want to meet me when I was born. How do you feel about them wanting custody of you now?" Lily looked directly at her grandparents for the first time. "I think they're strangers. I don't know them and they don't know me. They didn't care about me when things were hard. Why should I believe they care about me now?" The Chen's attorney tried to paint Lily as coached, as simply repeating what her mother had told her to say. But Lily's honest, articulate answers made it clear she was speaking from her own heart and mind. When he asked her what she wanted, she didn't hesitate. "I want to stay with my mama. She's the one who took care of me when nobody else did. She's the one who read to me every night even when she was so tired she could barely keep her eyes open. She's the one who made sure I went to school and did my homework and had everything I needed. I love my mama and I want to stay with her." Mrs. Reynolds testified next, describing how she had got to know Sarah and Lily, explaining the support she was providing and why. "Your Honor, I'm not some bleeding heart philanthropist throwing money at random people. I'm a businesswoman who recognizes exceptional value when I see it. Lily Chen saved my son's life through observation and courage that 20 trained medical professionals didn't display. That tells me something about how she was raised, about the values her mother instilled in her." Sarah Chen raised a remarkable child under circumstances that would have broken most people. That's not neglect, that's heroism. Ethan testified about the night Lily saved his life, about her intelligence and character, about the kind of parenting that produces a child who notices details and has the courage to speak up. If Lily had been raised poorly, if she had been neglected or mistreated, she would have walked right past that hospital room without caring. But she stopped, she looked, she acted. That's not despite her upbringing, Your Honor, that's because of it. The hearing lasted most of the day, with both sides presenting witnesses and evidence. Finally, Judge Foster called for closing arguments. The Chen's attorney made an impassioned plea about family connections and the advantages wealth could provide. David countered with the undeniable evidence of Sarah's love and devotion, and the suspicious timing of the Chen's sudden interest in their granddaughter. Then Judge Foster called for a recess. I'll review all the evidence and testimony and issue my ruling tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Court is adjourned. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay awake in her comfortable bed in their nice apartment, terrified that she might lose the only thing that truly mattered to her. Lily crawled into bed with her around midnight, unable to sleep either, and they held each other in the darkness. "Whatever happens, I love you," Sarah whispered. "I will always love you, and I will never stop fighting for you." "I know, Mama," Lily whispered back. "I love you too." The next morning, they returned to the courthouse. The courtroom was packed with reporters and spectators who had heard about the case. Judge Foster entered and everyone stood. She took her seat and looked at both families with an unreadable expression. "I've reviewed all the testimony and evidence carefully," Judge Foster began. "This case comes down to a fundamental question: what is in the best interest of the child? The Chens argue that wealth and opportunity serve a child's best interest. Ms. Chen argues that love and stable attachment serve a child's best interest. Having heard all the evidence, I have reached a decision." Sarah held her breath. Lily gripped her hand so tightly it hurt. "The petition for custody is denied," Judge Foster said firmly. "Lily Chen will remain with her mother, Sarah Chen. Furthermore, I am granting Ms. Chen a restraining order against James and Patricia Chen. They are not to contact Lily or approach her without Ms. Chen's explicit permission." Relief flooded through Sarah so powerfully she almost fainted. Lily burst into tears. Around them, the courtroom erupted in noise, some people cheering, others gasping in surprise. Judge Foster wasn't finished. "I want to be very clear about my reasoning. The Chens presented themselves as loving grandparents who made mistakes but now want to do right by their granddaughter. However, the evidence shows a pattern of rejection and abandonment. They disowned their son for choosing love over their approval. They refused contact with their granddaughter for 7 years. They only filed for custody after Lily became nationally famous and after learning about the trust fund she will inherit. Their motivation is suspect at best, financially motivated at worst." She turned to Sarah. "Ms. Chen, you made difficult choices under impossible circumstances. Some may question the wisdom of allowing a 7-year-old to sell flowers. But I see a mother who was fighting to survive while battling serious illness, and a daughter who wanted to help in the only way she could. More importantly, I see the results of your parenting. Lily is well-adjusted, intelligent, compassionate, and remarkably mature for her age. Those qualities don't develop in neglected children. They develop in children who are deeply loved and carefully guided." Judge Foster's expression softened slightly. "Lily, I know you've had to hear a lot of difficult things about your mother during this hearing. I want you to understand something. Your mother is a hero. She kept you safe and loved during a time when many people would have given up. The fact that you wanted to help her, that you found a way to contribute to your family, speaks to the strength and love in your home. Don't ever let anyone make you feel ashamed of that." Finally, she addressed the Chens. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen, you made your choice 7 years ago when you turned your backs on your son and his family. You don't get to reclaim your grandchild now because she's famous or because she's inherited money. If you genuinely want a relationship with Lily, that decision will be hers and her mother's to make when and if they choose. But you will not use the courts to force your way into her life." Case dismissed. The gavel came down with finality. It was over. Sarah pulled Lily into her arms and they both sobbed with relief. Mrs. Reynolds hugged them both, tears streaming down her own face. David Harrison smiled, satisfied with the outcome he had worked so hard to achieve. As they left the courthouse, reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, and microphones were thrust toward them. But Sarah didn't care about any of that anymore. She had her daughter. Nothing else mattered. That evening, Mrs. Reynolds hosted a celebration dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. Sarah, Lily, Ethan, David Harrison, and a few other close friends gathered to toast the victory. Lily was allowed to have sparkling cider in a fancy glass, which made her feel very grown up. "I want to propose a toast," Ethan said, raising his glass. "To Lily Chen, who saved my life and then taught me what real courage looks like. And to Sarah Chen, who proved that being a good parent isn't about money or advantages. It's about love, sacrifice, and raising your child to be kind, observant, and brave." Everyone clinked glasses and drank. Lily felt warm and happy and safe for the first time in months. The nightmare was over. The custody battle was won. She could just be a kid again. But as dessert was being served, something unexpected happened. A waiter approached their table with a note on a silver tray. He handed it to Sarah, who read it with confusion. "What is it?" Mrs. Reynolds asked. Sarah looked up, her eyes wide. "It's from James and Patricia Chen. They're here in the restaurant. They're asking if they can speak with me and Lily for just 5 minutes. They say they want to apologize." The table fell silent. Everyone looked at each other, unsure how to respond. "You don't have to talk to them," David said immediately. "The restraining order means they shouldn't even be approaching you." "But they're asking, not demanding," Sarah said slowly, "and they did say they want to apologize." Ethan leaned forward. "Sarah, it's completely your choice, but if it were me, I think I'd want to hear what they have to say. Sometimes closure is important, even if it's uncomfortable." Sarah looked at Lily. "What do you think, baby? They're your grandparents, even if you don't know them. Do you want to hear what they have to say?" Lily thought carefully. She remembered what Ethan had told her about only caring what people who really knew her thought, but she also remembered something her mother had taught her about giving people chances to do better. "Maybe we should listen," she said quietly, "just for 5 minutes." Sarah nodded to the waiter, who went to fetch the Chens. A moment later, James and Patricia approached the table. They looked different than they had in court, smaller somehow, humbled. Patricia's eyes were red from crying. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with us," James said quietly. "We know we don't deserve your time or attention." "You're right, you don't," Sarah said coolly. "You have 5 minutes. Say what you came to say." Patricia stepped forward, her hands clasped together nervously. "We came to apologize, not to ask for anything. Not to try to change the judge's ruling, just to apologize. What we did 7 years ago, disowning Richard, refusing to acknowledge you or Lily, it was wrong. We were proud and stubborn, and we thought we knew what was best for our son's future. We were fools. When Richard disappeared," James continued, "we told ourselves we felt nothing because we had already cut him out of our lives. But that was a lie. We grieved every day. And knowing we had a granddaughter out there somewhere, a piece of Richard still in the world, and we had chosen not to know her, that guilt ate at us." "Then why didn't you reach out before?" Sarah demanded. "Why wait until now?" Patricia's voice broke. "Pride, shame, fear that you would reject us the way we had rejected you. We told ourselves you were better off without us. But when we saw Lily's picture in the newspaper, when we read her story, we realized we had wasted 7 years. We panicked. We thought if we could get custody, we could make up for lost time. We could give her everything we should have given Richard." "But the judge was right," James admitted. "Our motivation was selfish. We wanted to ease our own guilt. We wanted to prove to ourselves that we weren't the terrible people we feared we had become. We convinced ourselves it was about Lily's well-being, but really it was about our own." Lily looked at these strangers who were her family. She saw the tears on Patricia's face, the regret in James's eyes. They looked sad and old and sorry. She remembered something else her mother had taught her, that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or excusing, but it did mean letting go of anger so it wouldn't poison your own heart. "I don't know you," Lily said, her voice clear and steady. "And I don't think I want you to be my grandparents right now, maybe not ever, but I don't hate you. I hope that helps with your guilt." Patricia let out a sob. "Thank you, that's more grace than we deserve." If you truly want to make amends, Sarah said slowly, then respect our boundaries, respect the judge's order, don't try to force your way into our lives. Maybe someday, years from now, when Lily is older and can make her own decisions, she might choose to know you, but that will be her choice, not yours. James nodded. We understand, and will respect that. Thank you for listening to us, that's more than we had any right to ask. The Chens left quietly and the table sat in thoughtful silence for a moment. Then Mrs. Reynolds raised her glass again. To second chances, but only when they're earned. Everyone drank to that. The months that followed were transformative for Sarah and Lily. Sarah's health improved dramatically with proper medical care. By spring, she was strong enough to start her new job as a food safety consultant, work she found meaningful and rewarding. Lily thrived at her new school, making genuine friends and excelling in her classes. The media attention gradually faded as news stories captured public interest, allowing them to live more normal lives. But the biggest surprise came almost a year after the night Lily had saved Ethan's life. Ethan and his mother invited Sarah and Lily to dinner at their mansion, saying they had important news to share. When they arrived, Ethan looked nervous and excited in equal measure. I've been thinking about what happened, about how I almost died because I wasn't paying attention, Ethan said. And I've decided to start a new foundation. It's going to be called the Lily Chen Foundation for Observant Youth. We're going to provide scholarships and mentorship programs for kids from difficult backgrounds who show exceptional observation skills, critical thinking, and problem-solving abilities. Kids like you, Lily. Lily's eyes went wide. A foundation named after me. You saved my life because you noticed what others missed, Ethan explained. I want to find other kids who see the world the way you do and give them opportunities they might not otherwise have. And I want you to be involved as you get older, maybe helping interview scholarship candidates, maybe sharing your story to inspire others. But there's more, Mrs. Reynolds added with a smile. The trust fund that the Chens wanted to control, we've been managing the investments for you and it's grown substantially. When you turn 18, Lily, you'll have over $7 million. But we think you should use some of it now, not for yourself but to help other kids who are selling flowers or working to help their families. What do you think? Lily looked at her mother, who nodded encouragingly. I think, Lily said slowly, that I'd like to help kids like I used to be, kids who want to work but need to be safe. Maybe we could create some kind of program that lets them earn money in safe ways with adult supervision so they don't have to stand on dark streets alone. That's a brilliant idea, Ethan said. Let's make it happen. And they did. Over the next few years, the Lily Chen Foundation grew into a national organization that identified talented youth from difficult circumstances and provided them with scholarships, mentorship, and opportunities. They also created a supervised youth entrepreneur program that allowed children to earn money safely while learning business skills and staying protected. Lily never forgot those cold, rainy nights standing outside the hospital selling roses. She never forgot the fear of not having enough money for medicine or rent. But she also never forgot the lesson she had learned, that paying attention matters, that small observations can have big impacts, and that courage isn't about being big or powerful. Sometimes courage is just speaking up when you notice something wrong, even when everyone else seems to have missed it. She had saved a life by noticing spots on cheese. But in saving that life, she had transformed her own life, and eventually the lives of thousands of other children who would benefit from the foundation that bore her name. 20 doctors with all their training and expertise had missed what a 7-year-old flower girl spotted in 3 seconds. And that moment of observation, that instant of paying attention when others weren't, had changed everything. Years later, when Lily graduated from college with honors and gave the commencement speech at her university, she would tell the story of that rainy night. She would talk about the importance of observation, of noticing details, of having the courage to speak up even when you're the smallest person in the room. And she would end with the lesson that had shaped her entire life. The most important things in life aren't always the biggest or loudest or most obvious. Sometimes they're tiny spots on a piece of cheese. Sometimes they're the quiet voice of a child that everyone else is too busy to hear. Pay attention to the small things because sometimes the small things are everything. The audience would stand and applaud, but Lily's eyes would search the crowd for her mother, Sarah, sitting in the front row with tears of pride streaming down her face. Because everything Lily had become, every success she achieved, every life her foundation touched, it all traced back to a mother who had taught her daughter to notice things, to care about details, to work hard, and to never give up even when life seemed impossibly difficult. 20 doctors couldn't save a billionaire's life that night, but a 7-year-old flower girl could, simply by paying attention when others didn't. And in the end, that's what made all the difference. Thank you so much for watching this incredible story until the end. If this touched your heart, please subscribe to this channel to support our growth and help us bring you more inspiring true stories. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us continue sharing stories that matter. Don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let us know what you thought of Lily's remarkable journey. Until next time, remember to pay attention to the small details in life. They just might change everything.